In this video, I'm going to show you an overview of the files that are in G Suite or in the Google Workspace environment. The Presbytery has an account with Google Workspace, and all of the files that are a part of the ministerial committee are contained within Workspace. I'm showing you right now my Gmail page, and this is where you will end up when you sign in for email correspondences for the ministerial committee. It's important that this is our starting point to find the files within Google Workspace. Earlier, perhaps you recall seeing in a video on Workspace and Google and Gmail. You may recall from the training or the overview of that training video, the orientation of this page. What's important to note is over here on the upper right-hand corner, we have the emblem for Google and perhaps your initial for signing in as the Ministerial Committee Chair at fcpresbytery.org. And that is assigned to the chairperson of this committee, and so your name should appear there. What's important also are these 9 dots. In fact, I go to these 9 dots very, very often, and when you click those, these are the particular programs that are actively used by ministerial committee and the presbytery, and I'll give you an overview of the top programs that we do access and use. This is your account. This is where you go to change privacy settings or security settings. Here's Gmail, where you are right now. Drive is the name of the Google space where our drives and our sub-drives and our folders are stored. This is a very important place for you to find in particular files that you're looking for, and I will go to Drive in just a moment. Docs is a program of writing documents, like Microsoft Word would be under Microsoft. Docs is the name of the program where we type and write documents. Forms is a very powerful program, and we use Forms to correspond with our teaching elders and our clerks of session at various times of the year, as well as creating a platform by which we request and send or have sent to us forms from our candidates preparing for ministry, as well as candidates preparing for ordination. Sheets is a database program. It's a program where not only we have an ordinary database, but it's a program where many of our files end up located. So, for example, I will show you in a future video one of the most common files that we use, database files that we use in the ministerial committee is called checklist files, and each candidate and each teaching elder has a checklist, and in that checklist you will find various sub documents embedded within that database file. So it's a uh, very powerful form. The slide program is a program that I use primarily for ministerial committee slide presentations, should that be desired or used at a presbytery meeting. Admin is a link that we use, and certain leaders within the presbytery, especially on the presbytery leadership team, will have access to the admin button. Admin is where we go to maybe take a new committee member who is not on fcpresbytery.org and assign them a Gmail account. This is very important because all of our files within ministerial committee should be considered as confidential. And the policy is that people on ministerial committee have access to all of the ministerial files only and only through their Gmail fcpresbytery.org account. If you log into your personal Gmail account and try to access some of those files, for example, in a checklist for a candidate, you will not be able to access those files because they're restricted only to ministerial committee persons in their fcpresbytery.org accounts. So it's very important when you have a committee member join your committee who may not have a fcpresbytery.org Gmail account that you assign them account. And whoever has the rights of administration for that has the ability to go and assign them a new Gmail account, which is probably very likely what happened when you were elected to serve as chair of ministerial committee yourself. The contacts link is where email contacts are entered in. So if you have an email from a new candidate, you might be adding them to your contact list so you can easily draw up a new email that you send to that particular person. Calendar, of course, is calendar, and that could be the means by which you schedule ministerial committee meetings. And you could even use the Google Meeting app where you can do a video meeting through Google Maps. Or Google Calendar, you can do a Google virtual meeting. YouTube, of course, is YouTube, but this is very important for our committee in the sense that these videos that you're watching today are housed within our FC Presbytery YouTube account. And that's what we use YouTube for in our presbytery or in ministerial committee. But today the purpose is to give you an idea of where to find the files for ministerial committee. These have been organized under Drive up here, and I'm going to click that. And now Drive is open. You want to pay attention to the left column over here under the word Drive. In that list, you'll see a list of items that you might have labeled as priority items. But first would be those that are in My Drive. My Drive includes the files that would be under the entirety of FC Presbytery, but we want to go to shared drives. These are drives that everyone that is in the leadership or within the presbytery have access to. Some have access to change files, some have access just to read those files. But within shared drives, you'll find the main drives for presbytery. And at this point, the main drives for presbytery are the presbytery team drive, ministerial committee, which is our drive. We'll go to that in a second. Presbytery leadership team, PLT, and session minute review. So session minute review committee uses this program very actively for collecting session minutes and reviewing them. But our concern is for ministerial committee, right? So we open that. And if you just tap that, then you have all the subdirectories within ministerial committee. And what you have are the various drives that you might be, or directories that you might be interested in doing some work or finding some documents within. Administrative, under that are some subdirectories that we have. One is a project that I'm working on, but others are some of the files that we have within our presbytery. Second, or for ministerial committee. Second is labeled ministerial advisors, and a candidate under care during that period of being under care, which is at least 1 year, could be 3 years. Um, they will have a ministerial advisor, which is a teaching elder from our presbytery. And here is the job description for that person. And so that has been placed in a Google document. You see the blue square, that means it's a document. And um, so, for example, you might use that document by opening it and highlighting the whole thing and making a copy of it, and going back to Gmail and copying that inside of an email that you might be sending to a teaching elder who has just agreed to be a ministerial advisor for one of your candidates. This next one is called the Annual Candidates Report Directory. And every year we send a request to our candidates and to the ministerial advisors to give us a report on their activity. The candidates in terms of their activity, preparing for ministry, preparing for ordination, or doing their studies in seminary. We also send a report to ministerial advisors. That's where you'll find those, as well as the directories for responses. Next are the annual reports for teaching elders. Here we have original forms, and then this is the list of responses. Usually these are the years that those responses are collected, so you can go back and look through those as an archive. Annual terms of call. Again, you have the original forms that are sent and the responses that we receive. And we'll get into further detail about how to send out annual reports and annual terms of call. This is just an overview. This is a directory of archives. These are questions, sample questions that you might use for candidates coming under care. In fact, the PDF in this is from the procedure manual. The procedure manual, which is introduced very briefly in one of the upcoming videos, is your how-to book, the Bible, so to speak, of all of your work a ministerial committee. I highly recommend that you get a copy of that procedure manual in paper and have it on your desk at all times. Within that procedure manual, though, is a list of questions that the committee should be asking candidates prior to coming under care, which is a very helpful document that we use when we interview a candidate prior to having them being received by presbytery to come under care. The CEEP link here, this acronym is for Continuing Education Equivalency Program. That's a very fancy word for saying that some of our candidates for ordination may have received a master's degree, but not a Master of Divinity degree. And Master of Divinity is what is required by our Book of Order. But the Book of Order gives an allowance for us to take a candidate and send them through the CEEP platform. Now that requires a vote of presbytery, and it requires a 3/4 vote of presbytery. And when that happens, it's usually when a candidate is received by presbytery. Usually at that point, we know that they do not have an MDiv and are not pursuing an MDiv. And what this program does is it allows us to look at their transcripts, to place their courses taken on a worksheet, and to easily detect what is missing in their transcripts. The final decision is by a committee over us at General Assembly that looks at that worksheet and then comes back with specific recommendations of courses to take to fill in those gaps. The chair link is primarily occupied with training material for you as chair of ministerial committee. Commission pastors. This is a where we put all of our correspondences and all of our working documents for commission pastor. Commission pastor is a ruling elder who is allowed to serve as a pastor of a church. These ruling elders are allowed to uh, preach, serve sacraments, and even to moderate session. This is usually what happens in a church that is smaller or located in a very isolated area. Congregational files, these are files from specific congregations where we put correspondences and so forth. And the current copy of the Book of Order is placed in this file. Here are some exam questions for the oral examinations that we do for a candidate, that we are examining them just prior to authorizing their ordination. Exam request. This is a link to request written exams. Written exams, of course, are given to candidates who are seeking ordination in the EPC. Those people who need to take the written examination would be candidates under care, or it could be a candidate from a non-reformed tradition who has already been ordained by that tradition. For example, a pastor of an independent Bible church that is highly reformed and wishes to be in the EPC as a teaching elder will need to take that written exam because the credentials he has to be ordained, there's no way of us knowing what preparation went into that. And so a written exam is a way for us to be able uh, to discern the true nature of the Reformed faith and their understanding of our Book of Order and the other areas that we're examining uh, candidates in. Leadership Training Guide. Here's a copy of the Leadership Training Guide, which we use to train ruling elders. And sometimes the ministerial committee will take upon itself, especially with a church that is seeking affiliation with the EPC, the ministerial committee or a committee member may take upon himself or herself the role of teaching that leadership guide. And here is a sample schedule and how that schedule matches up between the leadership training guide and the Westminster Confession of Faith. At this particular point, that leadership training guide is only available in print versus a download. So now we get to ministerial committee items. This link has ministerial committee agendas in it. These will be agendas for specific ministerial committee meetings in the past. These are ministerial applicants and the archive of those applicants. This is a file that you will, or directory that you will access pretty frequently. Ministerial committee candidates. These are candidates who are coming under care or are already under care for that period of at least 1 year. And so you can see from this list with the capital letters CAN that we have at present 8 individuals who are under care or coming under care. And their items that they email to us are usually placed under that subdirectory under their name. Checklists, these are checklists that we use, and I'll introduce you to those checklists, but these are checklists also from the EPC website, giving us a list of items that they require for certain situations. Commissioned lay pastors, that would be a commissioned pastor that is also listed above. These are ministerial committee documents, various documents that we have placed in here. These are particular forms at one time that the ministerial committee used. This is also a very often used place here. This is where we house minutes of ministerial committee. And you can search through these minutes to find previous actions of ministerial committee. But these are where I would find a copy of ministerial committee minutes and make a copy of that template and then begin to build a sheet of minutes for an upcoming ministerial committee. The ministerial committee at present meets every month at a certain particular time on a particular day of the month, so that members of ministerial committee can plot on their calendars those meeting times well in advance. These are presbytery reports, and so this is where I would take items from my ministerial committee minutes after a meeting has occurred and would add those items to a document that I carry with me to presbytery meetings. And I call this document Report and Recommendations to Presbytery. This is also a script for ministerial committee so that you can follow very carefully what is said or what needs to be done in different actions that come. Here's a list of retirees. This is ministerial committee stated supplies. So each stated supply in our presbytery should have a folder here. Stated supplies are ordained, usually ordained in another body. Some of those are ordained in a Reformed body, some are ordained in independent or even Baptistic bodies, and they are serving in various roles in our churches, maybe to assist a pastor or maybe even to fill pulpit and offer sacraments. Here is a list of directories and for teaching elders within our presbytery. These are teams. So the ministerial committee has organized itself into teams, and teams are responsible for making sure that a candidate goes through the proper process and all the documents have been read and approved for their ordination. Here's some tutorials. This is where links to tutorials for members of our committee are housed. So just like you're accessing these videos today through the ministerial chair directory, this is where members of the committee can go and receive video orientation and training for their role. These are nominations to General Assembly that come through ministerial committee. Here are some ordination exam study guide links for people. Often we are asked by a candidate who is ready to be ordained before they take the written exams, where do I go to study, or what kind of things do I use to study for this? Can I find any sample questions? All of this information is collected here, and it is found in various places on the internet, but I put them here. Here is ordination service. So one of the things that we do is to prepare for an administrative commission to go and ordain a pastor or a teaching elder in their church. Here's pastor search information, especially a chapter from the procedure manual on the pastoral search process. When a church is embarking upon the process of looking for a pastor for their church by a pulpit nominating committee, one of the things that we do at ministerial is we assign them a liaison, a person from the committee to meet with that pulpit nominating committee in person, or it can be virtual, But the initial meeting, once that committee is assembled, as soon as they're assembled, we meet with that committee or the chair of that committee and go over the process of pastoral search that is found in the procedure manual. There's an entire chapter in the procedure manual that clearly explains the processes that they go through in searching for a pastor, as well as the role. And here is a digital copy of the procedure manual itself. And sometimes a teaching elder in our presbytery request an advocate. And so if there are any written reports on that advocacy, then that would be in this file. Welcome email is a place that I go to very frequently as well. In this welcome email, as you see, all of these are documents. And within the documents are links that will take them directly to a internet site with the documents that they need to fill. And these emails are the initial emails that we send out to a new candidate who wishes to come under care, or a new candidate who is seeking to be called as pastor or associate or assistant pastor of a church and needs to be ordained. These are the emails that we send and the forms that are required by them. And you see the different types of emails. I'm going from the bottom of the list up now because it's candidate under care. This is the first step a person takes to enter into the ordination process in the EPC. And this, this document is a document that I open. And again, we highlight it and copy it, and then paste it within an email sent to that candidate. And it describes to them the process that they need to go through. And here are all the forms that they need to complete. And if they put their cursor over the form, it will highlight the link, and there goes the form. And this is a form that they can complete online and then submit to us. This describes all of the requirements and all the things that we request them to send prior to our initial interview with them to come under care. So what you notice on this directory is that there are different types of situations. For example, this is an email for a candidate from another Reformed tradition. Maybe this candidate is a candidate from another Presbyterian denomination with which we have fraternal relationships. The next one up is non-EPC ordained. And this is someone who's ordained in a non-EPC church. This may be a Presbyterian who is already ordained and wishes to transfer those credentials into the EPC. Next is the non-EPC candidate, and that particular person is not ordained, may be in candidacy in another Presbyterian denomination, but wishes to complete that process by being ordained into the EPC. This next one is an EPC ordained individual. This will be a teaching elder who is already ordained, serving perhaps in another presbytery and coming into our presbytery to serve in a church. EPC candidate, how does that differ to candidate coming under care? Well, this would be a candidate who is under care in another part of the EPC. And perhaps he or she is a candidate in Presbytery of the West and has accepted a call to become an associate or assistant or a solo pastor or senior pastor of a church in our presbytery. And how do we prepare that person to be received and transferred over to us so that we might complete the ordination process. Typically, if a person is under care and they accept a call to a church, that the presbytery where that call is being issued is the presbytery that would complete the process of preparing them for ordination. So a candidate would be under care in the presbytery where their home church is located. And typically, those candidates, the process of ordination is completed in the presbytery in which they are called to serve. And we also have a Spanish version of the EPC candidate email. Again, what I do is I open that document, I copy that document, and I paste it in an email to a candidate. And this last link would be copies, electronic copies by PDF of the essentials of the EPC Church as well as the Westminster Confession of Faith. And that gives you a brief overview of the directories within Google Workspace for Ministerial Committee.